Hit record, and it says it's recording.
Okay, good to go. Welcome to the So What You Think podcast. This is episode 1 of the COVID series. Let's get it. Okay, so brother, we're back.
Indeed, somehow, some way.
This is your host Tom Heil as usual. My co-host Legend.
Here, what's good with y'all?
We gonna try something different. We're not only are we gonna do the audio message through through Zoom, but we're also gonna try to do a little visual experience for y'all for the first episode of the COVID series. We had to start back recording, and this is how we had to do it.
Right. I mean, gotta put the hustle to the muscle.
You know what I mean?
Make it happen.
So, bro, how you doing in quarantine, man?
In all honesty,
yeah,
I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm good. Taking this time to relax, taking this time to be creative, taking this time to, grow and read scripture, spending time with his wife and, just like really taking advantage of this time, you know what I mean, the right way and the beneficial time. And, not only because, basically with this, like after work, I'm doing other work anyway. So now it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, just getting
you can focus on your other work.
Yeah, man, and use that time to relax. So I'm actually good, man. I'm taking this time, using this time wisely, and I'm enjoying it. I definitely want outside to open up. Yeah, I mean, but at the
Legit.
same time, I'm enjoying this time. I can't complain. I can't, like, honestly.
That's
How you,
legit.
though?
I'm good. I'm good, man. Honestly, today was the first. We've been inside since what, like March, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And I'm losing track. And today was the first day I really needed to get out, so I took a walk. Today was the first day I felt like, man, I need to get outside, so I took a nice little walk. I had my protective gear with me just in case I decided to go in anywhere, but I just took a walk around the block a couple times.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm good. Just using this time for school. Just also to spend time with God. To be a creator, which maybe that's what we'll talk about for culture. I actually thought, but yeah. So just using the time to be a creator, man. One of the things I felt like God gave me in the beginning of this is like, when I give you a download, you got to upload. So I've been like, I'm doing it fast. And so every day I'm trying to go live on Instagram and just kind of show something God showed me through scripture. And it's like a little 15, 20 minute thing, unless me and you are both on there and it's like an hour.
Yeah.
But, just try to share what God gives me, and it's been cool, man. It's been really cool, honestly. I feel like I've done more. I've gotten so much more time for like side work. Like I've been doing a lot more reading, stuff like that, like stuff I've been wanting to do more of, because my part-time job is not on right now. So it's been cool, man. It's been cool. God's been providing. He gave me a job where they pay me for this time off. So yeah, man, it's been good, bro. I'm excited to be back, man. Excited to be back. So What You Think podcast.
Yeah, somehow, some way. You know what I mean? Gotta make it happen.
And so, after this, we're done here, y'all. And if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, we're sorry if it's not as clear as usual. We're not in our usual studio mode right now, but we will give you this content. So
we'll get this work.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's talk a little bit about faith, my brother.
What's good with it?
A little bit about faith. So to me, when I was thinking about this, I had a couple ideas, and so let me see if I can prop this so y'all can still see me. I'll read the scripture real quick. So this is out of Romans 8:3, and it's for what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
God sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh. So I'll be using these hard translations, Mick. But basically, what I'm seeing, and if you want to turn to it, bro, again, it's Romans 8:3.
Romans 8:3.
But so I think what we really need to focus on is, like, in this, it's talking about the law at first, right? Which we know to be the law that God gave Moses.
Right.
And it says that it was weak through flesh. What I'm hearing through that is like, the law makes anybody weak, right? Because we are not perfect, right? And and especially if you go into like the nitty gritty of the law, it's impossible to hold up, right?
Yeah.
You had people that would have to, like, that's why they said at the time, the river, that whatever river was closest to the place that they were sacrificing, doing this, the priests were doing sacrifices, it would run red.
Yeah.
The waters would run red, because all day they'd just be slaughtering animals. Because everybody sins. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's a need for Christ. And I think in this time of COVID-19, this time of, pandemic, quarantine, there's even more of a reason to acknowledge who Christ is.
Right.
And it's just reminding me of it, because, like, it talks about through Christ it condemned sin.
Right.
And I love the way that's illustrated, right? Like, we're condemned by sin, but then because of Christ, sin is condemned.
Mm-hmm.
But that comes through a willingness of giving into Christ.
Yeah.
One of the things me and you got a chance to talk about in one of our lives that I want to kind of cover with this is there's a difference between belief and faith. I think sometimes we settle for surface level belief.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say surface level faith, which is belief.
Right.
Belief is great. Belief it might open the door, but then you have to walk in it and continue to walk in it, right?
Yeah.
Once you get in that door, and it's like us, the only way we can, like, quote unquote, lose salvation is by turning away ourselves.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we choose that. Definitely.
So what are you thinking, bro?
So the crazy part is, like, when you talk about Romans 8:3, and talking about it, it was, talking about how the law of Moses, like, through man's sinful nature, was deemed imperfect. And the whole thing was, to me, one of the things that stuck out was, it wasn't saying that God's plan was failed or faltered. It was more so because of man's deficiency to be, because of depravity, that we were unable to hold up this standard, right? So when we couldn't stand up, God sent a stand-in, which was Jesus. So the thing was, I think even Paul, I think it's in Romans 7, I believe, where Paul talks about, the law showed me that, like, I was sinful. I'm thankful for that. It showed me that I was in need of a savior. And I think, I going back, like, the scripture that popped in my head was, Hebrews 10:3, where it talks about when they had to offer sacrifices, people were, instead of being, free from their angst and their guilt for what they did, they actually were reminded of their sin. And there's so many scriptures in the Bible that allude to, okay, the law of Moses was good, but it doesn't compare to the law or the greater that is coming, that Jesus came. And the Bible, like Jesus was the stand-in for us. You know what I mean? The perfect lamb, the perfect sacrifice to live out the law and fulfillment because we couldn't do so. So in doing that, he became, you know, because he conquered the law and the law through him was fulfilled. Now we have the opportunity to abide in the new law, right? Which is so much greater than the other law, than the prior law. You know, I think Hebrews 9 touches on it, where it says like, you know, without the shedding of blood, there's no atonement for sin. But it also says like, if the blood of bulls and goats was good enough, like how much more worthy is the blood of, you know, the lamb. And there's other scriptures like Hebrews, like, yo, Moses' law was okay, and it fell because of our deficiency and our depravity. But the law that is now here is so much greater. Like you had to understand that. And I think our sinful nature, like inherently because of depravity, because of what happened in the garden, you know, we would never be able to uphold and keep the standard. But Jesus sent the standard, or God sent the standard, which was Jesus, and now we have this opportunity to abide in the new law, which is, and that's not saying like, again, you just go out here and just wild out. Yeah, you know I mean, like, you know what I mean, have no standard and have no protocol, but it's more so saying like, God is so understanding and knowing that you will never be able to keep this up. However, I sent someone who would pay that ransom for you, and give you an opportunity to walk in this new freedom. So,
well, it's like, yo, Jesus even says, bro, like, I didn't come to abolish the law. Instead, I came to fulfill it.
Fulfill it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, and that's why, like, I have a friend, well, we both know this person, but I have a friend, he said, he always says, like, whenever you have an issue, and it might seem very, like, blanket, but it's real. You know, he always said, like, if you're struggling with something, he always says, you know, did Jesus die so you could struggle with that?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, snap. You know what I mean? Like it's one of the things that, like, even though it sounds like a very blanket statement, I mean, sometimes there's just very blanket statements, like Jesus saying, yo, I'm the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
Like, that works for any scenario.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just is. You know what I mean? And so I think when we look at these things about Jesus, we have to understand, and that's why, you know, I saw this sermon by Judah Smith one time, and he was talking about how he got emails, and he was using a particular email, and he said, you know, I get these emails all the time, but I got this one email, and he's like, and I just got to talk about it. I'm not gonna say who it's from, but I just got to talk about it. And this girl, she's like, I love when you talk about Jesus and forgiveness and grace, and like, when are we gonna talk about all this other stuff? When are we gonna stop talking about that and start talking about all the other stuff? And he's like, never. He's like, I can never be done talking about grace and Jesus and the hope that he is, because it's like, there's so much to explain. It would take the rest of my life to try to cover, you know, even try to cover this, you know? And I think we forget the intricacies of Jesus's mission here, the intricacies of what the intricacies and the, I would say, like, what the implications of grace are. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like grace isn't just something that happened and now it's just there. Like, grace is constantly happening because of God. Yeah. You know, like, grace is just constantly flowing. You know, man, like, and I say this to the students I used to mentor all the time, like, yo, I need grace every moment. Not every day. I need grace every moment, because I'm just always, like, I'm always falling short. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think when, like, I like your point when you brought up the idea of, like, Moses' law, there was nothing wrong with it, because there's the thing, it was for Moses to give to the people, but it was God's law. Right. And it's this idea of God knew that he was going to have to bring Jesus the moment that they sinned, the moment that Adam and Eve sinned.
Yeah, because of
Literally,
because of our depravity.
Exactly. So Genesis 3:15, and I can't remember all of it, but if you look it up, Genesis 3:15, I'm too lazy right now. Genesis 3:15, literally, he in a riddle, in very riddle-like terminology, says that Jesus needs to come.
Mm-hmm.
And like the way I look,
it basically says there will be an enmity between your son and her son, and paraphrasing, and it was basically like the son will come and tread on the serpent's head, and basically it's
your bruises
foreshadowing.
heal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus in Genesis 3:15, where it talks, it's right after God delivers the whole, okay, this is what is going to happen to you, but understanding that in the future there's a contingency plan for your sin, not because I failed, but because I knew you would.
Exactly. So the word I feel like people need to know, like hold up when you're thinking about like why constantly thinking on Jesus so important is the word redemption, right? Jesus was God's redemption story for humanity, but, and here's more important, as kingdom citizens, we need to acknowledge that even our salvation is for his glory.
Mm-hmm.
He redeemed us because he is perfect, so therefore needs to bring a perfection to his creation.
Right.
So I'll never be able to re-say that like that again in my life. But like the thing is, like when you think about this plan that was enacted in God's, like he's so much more than a mind. Like I don't even think you could say a mind, but when it was put out,
cortex,
right, divine cortex. But like, yeah, like it, when it was thought out, at that point on, it's enacted. Mm-hmm. So this redemption story begins there.
Yeah.
And it continues on through the prophecies of the Old Testament, through the illustrations of David fighting a giant, through, you know what I mean? Like through a wedding in Cana. You know what I mean? Like these were all the like God took so many moments to talk about what was going to happen at the cross way before the cross happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jesus preached about what's going to happen on the cross before he died several times.
Yeah, right.
So for God so loved the world, he gave his only son.
Right,
like, like we think about it, like, at the time they were probably like, yeah, Jesus, cool, we got you. Like, no, he gave his son because I'm gonna be sacrificed. Like, it's this idea of like, yo, man, and this is something I really want to leave in this conversation is like, yo, if you could do anything, this would be a challenge because I started doing it myself. Go through the New Testament and read all the letters in red. Write them down and pray about them, yo. Like, because there's some things, man, that Jesus will say offhanded, like just in conversation that, like, when you think about them, you're like, oh, snap.
Yeah, because, speaking of which, Change Church right now, they're in a series called Red Letters.
Oh, snap, for real?
Yeah, shout out to Change, Pastor Lodge, and Ashley, Hollis doing their thing, but they're doing a sermon series right now called Red Letters. And one of the things about this quarantine time that's actually been kind of dope that I'll touch on real quick before we move to like the next segment or whatever, is that because we have this ability to go live and interact, right? There's times where you want to go to everybody's church, but there's only one Sunday or whatever. But because everybody's doing live and taping their services, you can go back and rewatch other people's church. So I could go to my church, but I can also watch your church, but I can watch somebody else's church. And it's like so dope to have that like video on demand type of church, you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh man, I can go watch something from here, something from here, something from here. So like they actually have a series right now going on called the Red Letters, which is dope. And shout out to them and City Life and Lighthouse Church and all the churches out there who are using, the tools to be interactive despite, not being in the facility. I think that's dope. But yeah, you talked about the red letter, so it came to my mind.
Absolutely. No, like for real. And the thing is, man, I thought about this the other day. Like those letters are red, obviously represent like Jesus, because he is the blood of the covenant is what binds us to salvation, right? The blood is a huge part of that. That's why, like, when you hear, and that's why, like, yo, I love hearing some of them, like, old church people, they know how to pray. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, they can just touch you like the blood, and you be like, oh snap, you know what I mean? Like, you just like be lit up. And I'm like not even trying to be super churchy, but like, yo, if you've ever had like someone who, like, with some big anointing, like, just lay a hand on you, just say the blood. Like, that's all they have to say, bro.
Right.
And I'll feel it. Like, you spiritually feel something. And because, and I saw this talked about the other day by somebody, but that's because they have an understanding of what the blood is and how powerful it is.
Yeah,
so
respect and reverence for it. Yeah.
Exactly. You were, yo, you think of like 10 steps ahead of me. So the reverence is the access to the authority, right? So a lot of people under spiritualize prayer, and it irritates me so much. You know, like, yes, there is an over spiritualization at some point because people just try to use big words and make they sound like they know what they're doing, but they really know what they're doing. But there is a huge spiritual aspect. I mean, that's literally warfare, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you go into war in that moment. And so when you think of the blood, like, I remember one time I saw this older pastor. I was at a prayer meeting and he was preaching. And I mean, I think you met Pastor James, my old mentor, like once before he passed away, when he was in the wheelchair. But Pastor James, like, I remember one time he said, you know, like, when you speak out the letters in red and you understand, like, the price that was paid with those words, it gives you authority to speak against a lot of things. It gives you authority to heal. It gives you authority to do all these things because of your reverence, because of, I mean, I'm just connecting the dots, right? Like, because of reverence, because of an understanding of what the price that was paid. So I think, man, like, I love what Judah Smith said. Its implications, like, if you start talking about stuff like this, its implications are huge. You know what I mean? Like, this idea of, like, yo, I could spend the rest of my life just preaching about grace. Like, you can call me the grace pastor, whatever, right? Just preaching about grace. And even in that, right? So I remember me and you had a conversation years ago about grace and truth. Right. And it was at a Bible study. And, like, sometimes we said, like, oh, some people too much grace, some people too much truth. And when really both are relevant. And it's not about which you do more of, but that you just use both.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, we have these people like, oh, they're a grace preacher. They just only preach grace. Oh, they're a truth preacher. They only like, they don't do enough grace. No, you're supposed to use both. Because grace in itself is truth.
Right. And
truth in itself, because Jesus, the way, truth, and life, is grace.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. That's a whole rabbit hole. I could do a whole episode just on that. But yeah, that's a whole rabbit hole. But yeah, man, I just think in this moment, man, before I get your last thoughts, I just want to say mine. Like, in this moment, man, it's super vital to just keep Jesus first. And to think on things that are going to bring you closer to him in this season. You know what I mean? Because it's easy for us to get distracted by all the stuff we got in our house, or, like, all the things we can do. You know, a lot of people just in there playing video games. I'm like, yo, you 30, turn them off. And, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to play video games. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, here's the thing. Because, look, I play a game on my tablet. I know you play games. It's cool. But the problem is like, we get borderline idle with everything. You know what I mean? Like, we make an idol out of everything, bro. Like, yo, I mean, look, you're a creative, you're an artist. Music, some people make music an idol. You know what I'm saying? Like, like, anything can become an idol. And so when we make the things around us, our video games, our cell phone, social media, and we let that take precedent over God and over the things that God has called us to do. So, for instance, you are a great example of someone who, when it comes to music, you don't just do music because you love music. You do it because that's what God called you to do. And there are people that like do things that have nothing to do with the things that they're called to do. Yeah. And so they spend their lives, just years and years of their lives, man, just going, like, but never really accomplishing anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just think, man, this is time to focus in on God and the things that God has called you to do, and Jesus, and the reason why we're able to live so free. And so, last thoughts for you, bro?
No, I would just agree. I think this whole faith portion of the conversation was basically talk about the gospel. And you can't talk about the gospel, which is the good news, without talking about Jesus. I think sometimes the gospel is only talked about in like Easter resurrection, period, as opposed to it just being a year-round, daily, focus of Jesus coming to live the life that we couldn't, die the death that we should, and resurrecting. I think that's something that should always just be represented and always be talked about and always be remembered. And shout out to Judah Smith for like even saying like, yo, like that is a part of the gospel. Like, you know what I mean? The gospel was talking about how he saved us. And I think that's my last thoughts, my closing thoughts, man. Like just the gospel, the good news being represented daily, and our flesh dying daily. So yeah, I would agree.
Word. So let's talk a little bit about culture, bro. So I said something earlier. What did I say we were going to talk about earlier? I just said this earlier.
We were talking about for culture, which actually could have been a light topic. Because they're everything is connected. Just talking about really like living a life that is representing your faith.
You got okay. Good. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna tell everybody we're gonna make this is gonna be both topics of culture and life, because I feel like it's gonna take the most to talk about.
Life. Locher.
Clife. So I look at. I was kind of thinking about this. Remember when we were talking about what you can talk about the episode, is how in social media, you'll see people who post a scripture, but in the next post, it'll be a very provocative photo. It'll be something with like a lot of cussing in it. It'll be something where they're slandering somebody. It'll be all right, we won't go down that rabbit hole another day. But there will be something that almost speaks to the opposite of what they are showing when they post this Bible verse. It's like the people that like to talk about how Jesus loves you, but then like to also post pictures of the people that they're living with that ain't married. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look, and this all sounds very judgy to people who are like maybe convicted by these statements, but I'm just being real with y'all. These are real things, and these are like, me and Legend have never shied away from the truth. So, I just, man, other people would say like I'm judging them, but I think you know me better than that. And I would say that this hurts my heart. When I page through and I see people, I mean, some of the people are people I love, you know what I mean? People I've known. And I see, them doing this and this and for church or preaching this, and this. And then part of their feed is just like something that goes polar opposite against what the message of the gospel is. Yeah. And look, we are all flawed. We all have, I would say we are at different spiritual places. Everybody has their struggles. Everybody takes a different time for sanctification. You know what I mean? But I think understanding that we're all called to the same conduct. And one thing that stood out to me, and I'm going to say a whole bunch and just let you break it down, okay? But one thing that stood out to me is I remember me and you had a conversation, and I actually shared it in my small group the other day, this men's group I have. where I said, you know, one of my best friends, Kenny, says all the time, he says, you know, like a struggle stops being a struggle when you stop struggling with it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's okay if you're struggling with something, right? Because that's something, you know, you bring to the feet of Jesus, you bring to the bottom of the cross, something you can come to a men's group or like a counselor friend, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But when that stops becoming, because there's people that are doing things that are outside the realm of what God calls us to be, and have just totally been okay, are just totally okay with that being who they are.
Yeah.
And like not striving towards a righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so I just want to get some of your thoughts, and then we'll kind of do some banter back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you touched on a lot. I think the one thing to remember is that we are all flawed,
Mm-hmm.
and none of us are perfect. But and that being said, our imperfection doesn't give us a reason to be imperfect. Um,
That's
and
good.
I think the beauty of salvation, of being saved, you know, again, you hear people say that being saved from what? You're saved from yourself. You're saved from your own depravity and your own ill will towards yourself and your soul.
Right.
Um, I think that sanctification is a daily thing, a daily process. Um, you know, for all of us, how God is continuously giving us grace and mercy and showing us and saving us from ourselves. I think our application to take heed to what He says is and to, because the Bible talks about not only being hearers but doers of the word. And I think
Right.
the idea of really taking the time to live this out, the true virtues of what you say you believe, I think that's represented in how you conduct yourself and how you choose to be being mindful of your representation of what you represent. Um,
Right.
that's not saying you're going to be perfect or spotless, but that's saying that you're really taking the time to be considerate of what you represent and to make sure that the standard that you choose to uphold, being separate in standard and moral, I think taking that time to really just be the best representation of what you believe in the fullest of all you do, I think is important. And then, you know, I think there are people who will say that they're struggling with something, and you know, a struggle is a back and forth, a tear between your heart and your mind of wanting to do something or not wanting to do something. And then,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they'll say they're struggling, but then they'll allow their struggles to become habits, which a habit is a lifestyle choice, something that you choose to walk in. And the thing is, right, like don't allow your struggles to become your habits, right?
Mm.
And then struggles, you take those things to
That's a
God.
bar.
But there are people who use struggle as a word because it sounds better to them in their heart of hearts instead of admitting I want to be God right now over my life. Right. So I
Mm.
want to have the free will to do what it is I want to do, as opposed to saying, understanding that God has given us this free will and the guidelines and the barriers that He's set up are only to make sure that we live a life that is the most beneficial. And
Yeah.
they're not to harm us or to hinder us from the enjoyment of life, but more so
Mm.
that we would live life abundantly. And that's like something completely different that sometimes in our, you know, rudimentary thinking that we'll just be like, well, God, you're keeping me from living. So I'm just like, it's like, no. But it's like, yeah, at the same time, you gotta you gotta uphold the standard. It's not saying that you can't live life or have fun or tell a joke or post a picture where, you know, whatever. But it's like the motive behind what you do, matters, and you know, and what your conduct, what you represent matters. You know what I'm saying? I think,
Yeah.
um, you know, and I'll get this like quick example real quick. I think that when you hear like rappers talk about women, right? And sometimes, and then you find out that they're married, you be like, wait, you talk about women like that. Two, you talk about your wife like that. And you know what I mean? Like, you be like, yo, how could you? But it's
Right.
like, no, because it gives off this false standard, or it's false advertisement, you could say, because it's like, all right, you talk about you with this one and that one and this one, but you clearly married, so that doesn't really uh, put in great perspective the benefit and the enjoyment of marriage. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
marriage is monogamous, and you and your partner, um, your husband and wife and husband, like sharing, that relationship together alone. You know what I mean? But you talk about this one, that one, this one, that one, then you call her out her name. I'm like, that's not respect. So it's like having that source of conduct. And to me, like, on a side note, it's always funny where, like, rappers or entertainers start dating this person. This person clearly tells you what they do and what their art form, and then it comes back. I can't believe that person cheated on me. I don't know why. It's like the sign from right there. you just
Right.
you
Listen to one of their songs. You
yeah,
know what I
right.
mean? Like,
Like,
well, here's the thing: we're trained up in a society, bro, that don't listen to the lyrics.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, they don't listen to the lyrics. And the thing is, man, I mean, I'm gonna talk about the church for a minute because you know me, right? But I wouldn't put this on necessarily the pastors or the church. I think it's a time where the church needs to start taking responsibility for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be, like, people blaming their church for them not growing and this, that, and the other. But, like, what do you do when you leave on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know how right these statistics are. I saw on Instagram. So, whatever.
Instagram stats.
Yeah, who knows? But, like, it sounded very believable. And they said it was like 64%, on average, 64% of church, of like most churches are living in sexual immorality or sexual sin. And I don't know if that's true.
How do you take that poll?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Like, how do you just
that's
walk
why,
around?
like, when people say statistics, I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, you like, what did you send a drone? I don't know.
Right, dude.
But
Like, do
anyway,
you just walk around like, hey, are you being sexual and immoral right now? Like,
yeah.
like, click yes or
So,
no.
and then even then, like, you have the, like, well, what did they considering sexual morality? So anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole. But I will say, as someone who's been in the church for 10, 12 years, whatever, ministry. I mean, it has to be 12 years because I've been in ministry for almost 10. For someone who's been in the church a little bit, and you've been in church your whole life, you know what I mean? We see it firsthand, bro. Because what happens is, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, but what I think happens is our definition of sexual morality gets blurred, or it's self-defined. So, I mean, I'm gonna pop the bubble of every young man that listens to this show. Jesus said, even if you look at a woman thinking about sex, thinking about lust, then you've already committed sexual sin. And look, same goes for the women. You know what I'm saying? And here's the thing. I'm going to go by that guideline first. We're going to graduate here 3 times. Okay. We're going to graduate 3 times. So first off, our thought life. Okay. This is the easiest way, and every single one of us do it at some point in our life. It doesn't have to be a continuous thing. It doesn't have to be a now thing. At some point in our lives, all of us have struggled with this idea of, like, sexual thoughts. And doesn't even need to be full blown. It is something that causes that stream of thought. Then you graduate, right? Then you have people that are having sexual intercourse or like touching beyond what is whatever, like basically anything beyond something super harmless, outside of marriage, right? This is something where I feel like a lot of people get snagged. I have in my past, you know what I'm saying? Like early in my walk, you know, it's something that snags people because I feel like it's something the church don't want to talk about. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to say like, you know, they don't want to say the word like, yo, frisking each other like with clothes on is still sexual sin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
or they talk about it. They don't talk about it in love. They talk about it in judgment.
yeah,
so like,
or exactly.
You out
So
here having sex, like,
right.
like
The
you know
way
what I
it's
mean?
talked about, and then I would say there's not a lot of emphasis put on personal discipleship, and what I mean by that is like community discipleship. So like we can use Chalice as an example. Like we know a young man in Chalice who is open about his struggles, who is walking in God's calling for him, who is walking towards marriage, who is engaged as a young person, who is being very intentional at a young age in his early 20s.
Shout out to Charlie.
You know what I mean? You know,
He get a shout out every show.
he does. And then you look at someone like me or you who like, you know, we took the time to do our relationships that are now marriages God's way. You know, those other moments where I've allowed, like, you know, early on my walk where I allowed like certain thoughts to creep in or whatever to happen, those didn't work out because I wasn't honoring God in them. And sometimes when we allow those relationships to go on, they become these relationships where you'll see churches where there's families, but they're not married families. You know what I mean? Like there's a dad and a mom and there's kids, but there's no rings on no one's fingers. You know what I mean? Or like, you know, like there's a huge precedent of people who are quote unquote, like, what do they call it? Like a hood divorce, you know, like where they like, there's people together that aren't married because the man still got, you know, an ex that he just let a divorce, you know? And so these are real things that are going on in the church that I'm not even going to talk about the pulpit right now, because the pulpit, whether you address it in love or not, it takes us as a body, as a community, to really come alongside people and not only inform people, because that can come off very judgy, right? When you just be like, oh, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, well, who are you? Like, you know what I'm saying? But if you do life with someone and you're like, hey, you know, let's talk, you know, let's go get coffee, let's whatever. Yeah. And you develop a relationship with that person will begin to trust what you have to say.
Yeah.
And then be like, you know, I see God. Like, so for instance, I could sit here on So What You Think podcast and say, you know, I have a God-honoring marriage, right? Which is true. You know it to be true. My wife knows it to be true. I know it to be true, right? I'm not perfect, but we honor God in our marriage, right? But if I'm in relationship with someone, like, you can tell people that, and people would believe you. They're not going to believe me, because of course I'm going to say that, right? Like, of course I'm like, I have the greatest wife ever, which is true. And I have a God-honoring marriage. But like, I could say that, but when you're like, yo, my man Tom has, him and his wife are just really intentional, blah, 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 blah. People are like, oh, so even his friends say that.
Yeah.
And so this is why, I know I'm going to let you talk. I'm like rambling. But like, this is why a lot of people say like, yo, let me hear hear what your friends and your enemies have to say. And like, people, if you're listening, don't get like super convicted if your enemies talk bad about you, because I got a couple of those too. But I like what they're saying is, you know, what would people that don't have an investment in making you sound good say about you?
Yeah.
And so you pick those people where they're above reproach, you know, they put God first, and you allow, like, you do life with them. Yeah. You know what I mean? actively seek a mentor, actively seek a counsel of friends who you can trust. You know what I mean? Like without you, without Charlie, without Steph, Walt, you know what I mean? Like the list can go on, Alante, Trey, you know, without these people, my council of brothers, like I wouldn't have the lifestyle I have.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because all of us fall short. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But because I have the right people in my corner, and that I can go to in the right moments that can push me to what God's calls in my life, that's why I'm able to succeed the way I do.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just think when it comes to like these, I mean, like these Instagram statistics mean nothing. I just want to say it because I thought it was hilarious. But somehow, like my exact thoughts were yours. Like, yo, like who like wrote on a piece of
I
paper?
was like, who took this survey? Like, hey, are you being sexually immoral right now?
Right.
Yes, no, maybe. On a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 10, it's like this.
Like, you know, like
how often are you sexually immoral?
Yeah, often, not so often, too often. Like, it's just how do you like?
God, please help me is the top not answer.
Conduct that survey.
But no, so like I said, I thought the statistics were funny, but you know how churches be sometimes they think if they throw statistics on it like whatever. But like my point is, I've seen it firsthand. Only being in church for like 12 years. Mm-hmm. I know have seen it, and you've been in church your whole life. You know what I mean? So like maybe minus 1 year or something. You know, when you were a toddler.
Facts, though.
So like I just want to hear some of your insight now, man. Like on this topic, I think it's a heavy topic people don't want to talk about often. Mm-hmm. But I think people knowing that this is the So What You Think podcast place we get this dialogue and have conversation.
Yeah.
That we can just dialogue together and like come at it as a community.
Yeah. I think it's all about like again intentionality and motive, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about that in the last segment, honestly, where you talk about the motive of what you do. And I think like, you know, there's nothing wrong with living life, because even the book of Ecclesiastes, where you know a lot of people scholars believe that it was written by Solomon, but he was saying like, yo, basically in paraphrasing, he was saying like, yo, don't live life so closed off where you miss it, but don't be so open to everything where like it's too much to take in. Like there has to be a standard. And I think what happens is, especially where like you talk about dating and love and intentionality and those things, like even like posts on social media stuff, I think it comes back to our natural identity to love and to be wanted and to be together. And I think one of those things that is forgotten is the intentionality of marriage. I think sometimes the wedding is glorified, but not marriage. I think also too, like we have this kind of like almost like this end of the world like perception of like, oh, you getting married, oh, that's it for you. But it's like, no, like when you truly understand what marriage is and why God values it so much, then you're able to see what that is. Like, you know what I mean? So you see that, you know, God respects the vow of marriage because God is one to be committed to his promises. So if that's a promise that you made before God, yo, vow to keep those things. That's, you know, when you see the benefit of the two joining together become one flesh, where you have a helpmate and, you know, and you're, you know, also a leader in a relationship, I think where you able to come together and have a friendship and bounce ideas off of each other, where it's not just this sexual tension, you know what I mean? But it's an intentionality to come together and to build something to help glorify God and edify other people. I think, you know, intentionality is something that isn't always truly taught. And I think that comes with discipleship. And I think, you know, where you talk about, so you'll have church philosophies, and then you'll have the world or the hood philosophies. You know what I mean? So, Like it's because you'll have the church tell like, oh, you gotta marry her, but you don't have someone walking the 16-year-old kid in high school in 11th grade talk about like how to treat a woman with respect, how to be admirable. He can't marry her right now because he's at McDonald's. You know what I mean? And he works part time, so he can't. You know what I mean? Like, so how do you help that kid? You know what I mean? Like, you need somebody pouring into that.
That was the greatest ever, bro. That was the greatest ever.
You need someone pouring into that kid, the 16-year-old kid who works part time at McDonald's on fries, and he wants. You know what I mean? You need someone who's telling him like, yo, like be upright. You know what I mean? Be respectful. Like.
Well, and bro, I don't mean to cut you off.
No,
but
you
like,
good.
This is why people like. I feel like I don't want to put you on a pedestal or anything, but like why people like you. Oh man, I can't talk. Are necessary. We've talked a lot about, especially urban areas.
Yeah.
There's this idea of like you have these old church folks trying to preach into the lives of youth, and the kids are like, for instance, I mean, I hate to say this. I know an occurrence where one of the young guys that eventually went to my youth group over in Bethel when I was there, he used to go to his church in Norfolk, and he was having these relationships with these girls, or whatever. A girl, but girls anyway. Not getting his business. And he had tried to have this older woman basically came at him for it. And like, this is a woman that, let's just say, like in what he can see in receipts, it doesn't show. And it doesn't mean that Grace hasn't washed her of that behavior.
Right.
Right. Because like basically she was a grandma and a mom of quite a few children, and a dad isn't present at the church or in the family. You know what I mean? And it's not a diss against this lady. Like, he told me all this in confidence, whatever. Everybody's remaining unnamed here.
Right.
But I will say this. If they had someone like you who from a young age chose not to do certain things because of seeing the outcomes of them being bad. So you've lived out the example. So for instance, I don't have that same story as you. Like for me, I found the Lord in my early 20s and really didn't start like moving towards him until like my mid 20s. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't start moving towards my calling until mid 20s, And so and that point forward, like early to mid 20s, I could say that I started doing my wrestling and developing in a way where I started to be above reproach to who I am now today.
Yeah.
So I can mentor to an extent, but it's easier for me to talk to maybe someone more like a young adult or an adult. Whereas I love that we have people like you in different realms talking to young people, because you have the receipts to be like, oh man, like blah 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 blah. You don't know what it's like, and you could be like, yo, here's my receipts. You know what I'm saying? And I think having that is vital right now. I mean, we know Daryl. Shout out to Pastor Daryl.
Yeah, I mean,
who has a huge family, married. Living a God honoring life. And when we have people like you two kind of ministering to the youth of city life, which like Bethel has kids from all over the city, decent areas, but also really bad areas, coming all to this one church, and you guys can really impart with receipts and relevancy. Yeah. And there's a few things I think are needed in the church right now is we need people with receipts and we need people with relevancy. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you need your receipts, because if people go, okay, cool, how can you tell me? I can go, yo, like, so someone wanted to be like, yo, well, how can you tell me I need to get married? I could be like, yo, my wife, we were met and married in a year and a half. You know what I mean? Like I could say, look, you want to talk to her, I'll give you her phone number. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, you want to talk to people around me, I'll give you your phone number. You want to talk to pastors, here's some phone numbers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can show receipts. And for you as a teenager, you lived above reproach from a young age.
Mm.
So you could be like, yo, here's my receipts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you stayed relevant because of just being irrelevant, like, you're relevant not just because you understand the culture, but you're relevant because you stay real to who you are.
Mm.
And I think those aspects are things we need in the community, and not just the urban community, the suburban and rural communities as well.
Yeah.
You know, but like in those different realms, we need people that are relevant to those areas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, even like you just talk about like in general, like the way our society teaches masculinity or teaches like the things that make you a man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta have a body count of this girl, that girl, da 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 da. You know what I mean? You gotta make that money. Somebody say something to you, like don't think about it, just hit them. Like those things are like not like
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing at the concepts, man.
yeah, like
It's like it's so really how it is. But like when you get like, I mean, I hate to. I'm not trying to insult anyone listening, but like if that's your mindset, man, it's just so comical. Like when
right.
you've gone beyond that, you
right.
know.
But it's like when you think about it in like biblical context with like discipleship, you're like, yo, these things are like inherently arrogant and ignorant and stupid. You know what I mean? But you don't
Stupid.
right. Like you need people to pour into people to tell them these things. You know what I mean? And what happens is there's a lost like generation or lost, there's people who are walking but there's no path for enlightenment. So you have like again going down to motives. So that young man is trying to prove himself. Oh yeah, this is what I call masculinity. Those are his motives. That's his intent. Oh yeah, get to the, as opposed to someone telling him like, yo, that don't make you a man. Like that doesn't make you a man. Or like the girl who posted the photo on Instagram or a video. It's like, yo, man, you don't gotta do that to be seen as the catcher of somebody's eye. Like, you know what I mean? But what society tells us, especially outside of biblical context, these are things that you need to do to be the apple of someone's eye, and as opposed to like giving them true, not only doctrine but true discipleship, and with intention. And I think that's what's like missing in the culture and the generation today, and that's why you have so many people who are like, I go to church and I'm cool with knowing about God, but having a relationship with God, I don't know how to do that.
Like you said earlier, difference between belief and faith.
Yeah.
You know,
they don't know how to walk it out because no one has ever showed them. So someone has showed them, or somebody has told them, oh, this is something you need to do. You need to have a relationship with God, but no one has ever showed them how to do that.
Well, and it's interesting because I believe part of it is, and I said this to my wife, like just literally the other day, people don't know how to do apologetics in the church.
Yeah.
And what people hear apologetics, and they think Ravi Zacharias, think they Abdu Murray, like they think of these big apologists, they think like the truth, you know what I mean? Like they think of these big apologists, but that's not, apologetics is simply, out of, I think it's 1 Peter 3:15, to give a reason for your hope.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's basically saying, like be able to defend your faith. And especially to the young generation, because they want the answers. I don't care who you are listening right now. Young people want the answers.
Yeah.
They just want your answers to look legit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Like there's this thing called moral relativism. Okay. So basically, and I know you know about this, but I'm breaking it down for the people. Moral relativism means basically what you consider relevant in culture or what is relevant to that person is what is moral. Mm-hmm. So basically people choose what is moral, mm-hmm. depending on that person, that individual person, or that individual culture. I'm going to give you 3 examples on why this is stupid, okay? And I'm just going to be straight up as possible, okay? You take, let's say, a 16-year-old boy from North Philadelphia.
Young
and
Kareem.
You take a 20-year-old Caucasian girl from, the hills. You know what I mean?
Jesse.
And you take, let's say, I don't know, 15-year-old, let's say a 15-year-old boy from India. Okay?
Hadish.
I can't with you. So if you take these 3 people and you ask them why it is hard for them to accept Christianity, you are going to get 3 extremely different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get, and you are going to have to come at these 3 extremely different ways. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to use 3 different types of apologetics. You're going to have to use 3 different types of sources. You're going to have to come in at 3 different ways, because each of these people have different questions and different reasons that they doubt the existence of God, and doubt, even if they believe that he exists, why they should follow him.
Yeah. Not to cut you off, but I think that shows the importance and the beauty of relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And then it also shows, like, you have people who don't know why they believe what they believe. Mm-hmm. And they've been taught it, but they don't believe it. They just been taught it. And I think once you have a relationship with God, because even the book of Jude, like, which is 1 chapter, by the way, like 1 chapter.
It's the greatest.
I think it's verses 24, 25, where it says, like, some people you can talk to harshly, and some people you can talk to sweet or calm. And some people need different approaches. You have to be available to give people different approaches to what they need to hear or how they need to see it. You know what I mean? And I think you can't call yourself a coach while you've never played the game. I think that's something that where, like, you gotta, the Bible says, study to show thyself approved. My people are destroyed by the lack of knowledge. But it's like, not only knowledge of the scriptures, but just knowing him. You gotta know God. You know what I mean? Yeah. To be able to tell people why it is that you believe what you believe and truly believe it yourself. So
I think, one of the things I think, is also important is Christians who do have that knowledge and understanding and relationship with God to inform themselves. But 2 different ways. You need to inform yourself of the scriptures, and the reason why those scriptures are important. And also maybe other, like, I hate to say this, but read some freaking books, yo. I mean,
you sounded so angry.
I have people that are like, man, I just wish I liked to read. I'm like, yo, there's literally Audible. You know what I mean? You got books that are turned into, like, movies now and stuff. Like, it's crazy.
Read some freaking books.
And I know I should, like, get that close to cursing, but here's why it frustrates me to no end. Okay, is, I remember one time I was talking to you and Charlie and someone else at Bible study. I don't know who else was there. I don't know. But whoever else was there was the one that asked me. But I remember saying, like, yo, Ravi Zacharias in this book, The Grand Weaver, says blah, 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 blah. And they're like, wow, I don't know how you read it. I'm like, I'm blind. Okay, if I can read a book, so can you. You know what I mean? Like, I listen to Audible. You know what I mean? Like, you can read a book. And here's why I say this, right? Because when you have multiple perspectives on the very scriptures that you strive to live for, I don't I am not nearly as smart as Ravi Zacharias. I'm just gonna be real. I can get some A's and B's once in a while, but I might rock around like, the low B, C area. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But my knowledge, my passion, and my knowledge for the scriptures is because of my passion. I'm not a scholar much in the realm of Ravi. I am more of an artistic scholar, if that makes any sense. Okay. Yeah. So Ravi has this understanding of culture that's different. Like when we think culture, we think like, oh yeah, like what's relevant right now is future. Like, but there's a broader world culture. And that's why I'm not going to get too much into this because I know we're short on time and I could really go in on this. But what a belief system in if you're going to go into like world cultures, it's called a worldview. So we have the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview covers everything we think, believe, know to be true, all those things.
Yeah.
It hits it. Now, here's the thing, and I'm about to crush a whole bunch of people and get a whole bunch of people mad, and that's okay. Okay? If your Christian worldview doesn't spread into everything, including how you view culture, sexuality, politics, everything, then you're not living in a full Christian worldview. Mm-hmm. And so this is why I say I say all the time, people are like, oh, what do you believe? What political party are you, Tom? I'm like, well, I'm a registered Democrat, but I don't believe any of them. Because, kingdom. Yeah, like, I mean, I know it sounds so churchy, but it's true, right? True. Because there's this idea of like, no matter what I register as, I might feel led by God to vote another way, right? And people be like, well, the Republicans believe in this, this, and this. I'm like, yeah, but they also believe in this. You know what I mean? So, like, there's this idea of, like, you can rationalize it by, I've heard a pastor once try to tell me, you just got to take the best of the most of what has the most in common with you, mm-hmm. and take the worst with it. I'm like, I don't have to take anything with it. I'm just going to vote for what I feel like to vote for, and that's it. Like, I don't need to co-sign anybody's political group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's so anyway, so I'm getting sidetracked. Worldview encapsulates everything that is the way somebody sees the entire world. Okay. Ravi Zacharias is like Christian worldview 101. Like the dude just, everything he believes has to do with the scriptures, the word of God, and being a kingdom citizen. Miles Monroe was very much the same. So when you look at these theists, which are basically Christian scholars, when you look at these theists who are able to take these things and interpret in each what part of life, here's the one thing we need though, and this is where I'm gonna refer to you, bro. There is, and this is why I brought up you and Daryl earlier. There is another realm, especially in urban areas, and I would say, I'm not gonna say urban areas. I'm gonna say in the United States in particular. Because, like I said, our three examples, the suburban girl would be just as complicated, right? Mm-hmm. So, because it's not easy for a rich man to go to heaven. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, there's everybody got their issues, and everybody has their thing that holds them back from seeing things God's way. And so when you can have people that not only have at least a slight understanding of a Christian worldview in a scholarly sense. So I'm not telling you to read as many books as I do because my brain hurts half the time. But I'm telling you to like read a book. Like if you read one book this year, you know what I mean, and you haven't read a book in 5 years, you're making it. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I said like, yo, just because here's the thing. For instance, I just sent you that Carl Lentz book on the moment, right? On Audible. Yeah. It's something you can listen to while you're doing other stuff and be informed while you're doing your own stuff. Carl Lentz is by no means Ravi Zacharias. You don't have to listen to each chapter 3 times to understand what's going on. But it's a different perspective, right? Because he grew up different than you. Yeah. You know what I mean? So he's going to give you a different perspective, Yeah. But I'm going to wrap up my little rant and then get your last thoughts, bro. But I just want people, look, I know I kind of end on a weird note, but just, look, open yourself up to understanding that the way that you inform yourself is the way you're able to inform others.
Yeah.
And understanding that that cultural relevancy has nothing to do with the, like, cultural relevancy to be in. I'm going to reword this. To be informed in cultural relevancy of your specific area or where you work is important, because if I'm going to go and do urban missions, I can't be trying to hit them with suburban concepts. You know what I mean? If I'm trying to go to the hills, you know, and I'm up in Beverly Hills, man, like, I can't be bringing up North Philly slang and trying to have them understand everything. You know what I mean? Yeah, or whatever. So, like, there's different. You have to understand that the cultural relevancy of where you are.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a church, like, okay, cool. If I'm a pastor, understand that, like, okay, yes, I grew up in the suburbs, and our church is in between the suburbs and the city. But I know Legend has grown up in churches in North Philly, and I can if there's a boy who really needs to be discipled, I can send him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my reign is done, bro. What are some of your last thoughts?
The greatest quote from that whole thing was, "Read a book. If I'm blind and I can read a book, that's the greatest quote from that. If I'm blind and I can read a book, you can read a book."
Yeah.
But no, man, I would wholeheartedly agree. I think understanding culture, how to address culture, you have to be a participant in culture. And paraphrasing Paul said, I became all things to win all people. So in Paul saying that, he was saying, like, yo, man, like, I liken myself to those people to understand them, to help win them over for the sake of the gospel. And I think what tends to happen, I think sometimes the church can be selfish with the gospel, where you have someone like, you know, the good news of Jesus, and we'll just be like, oh, when they come over here, then they can get it. But it's like, nah, like, that's not that's not how the gospel should be. Like, I mean, we should be the light to the darkness, and you know what I mean. We should just, like, all right, once you come over here, then we'll tell you the truth. But
sit through a 20-minute service, and then you get the free food.
Right? Yeah, I mean, you know, I think you're clever in the ways the Bible says, be as wise as a serpent and as soft as a dove. But the whole thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, there has to be some sense of logic and practicality. I think there also has to be a stance where there's a relevancy and the ability to identify areas where you can spark a conversation. I think a lot of times, you know, sometimes just listening. You know, don't talk to somebody to just give them something bad, but interpret what they say so you can see how they process. Right. And then give them something. And I think from the Christian, you know, going back to intent, you know, we mentioned a couple people. Shout out to Pastor Darrell. Shout out to Charlie, who's, like, intention on being a young dude getting married. You know, and you know, even, like, shout out to like you, like somebody like you who was, like, very intentional in marrying Alicia, and just having, like, that true intent, like, yo, a young guy, or even like for the female perspective, like a young girl, like, asking, like, yo, what can I do, like, in this meantime, in this meanwhile, to help me grow in God, so I could be the best husband eventually, so I could be the best wife eventually, like, you know, to help really lead and anchor themselves in the hope and the freedom and the love that is Jesus. And I think we need people who are consistent and true, and just really just being faithful and living it out. I know the Bible says that He's faithful when we aren't faithful. And I always say, like, yo, imperfect people don't stop me from loving a perfect God. But you have people who don't necessarily think like that. They'll say, yo, you're doing this. Why should I follow you? You look no different than me. Your life is no different from mine. But I think when your heart is truly invested into relationship with God, and loving God, and being for Him, in all aspects, when you talk about the Christian worldview, the biblical worldview, and what's the paradigm of which you see the world, I think, that should be in all things. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it for the glory of God. So I'm living my life in its entirety for the glory of God. That's in my art, that's in my job, that's in my marriage, that's in my friendships. I'm doing all those things to be a light for the glory of God, and hopefully the people are attracted to the light and they ask, what can I do to have this light that you have? Or, when they start to pour in. And you need people who are intentional about living it out and being intentional and enjoying it. You know what I mean? Not making it like this daunting task where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to serve the Lord today. It's Sunday. No, like, you know what I mean? Like, who had the joy of the Lord? You know what I mean? Like,
like true love to God is keeping his commandments. And the second part is, and his commandments aren't burdensome. You know what I mean? Like this idea of like, yo, don't act like you lifting weights because you did something, you just following Jesus. Like,
I'm going to service today. I guess. Praise the Lord, everybody. Like, no, like.
I love that you bring that up, bro. And I hate to cut in, but
you got?
My wife and me were at a marriage group one time, and I remember they kept on using the word hard, like, oh, marriage is hard. And my wife goes like, but does marriage have to be hard? No. You know what I mean? Like, and I think, I said something, and then basically we kind of like summed it up like this, like what my wife is trying to convey, and I think other people weren't getting, because like, we're young in marriage, people are like, oh, you guys don't get it, you blah blah blah.
Right.
And what she was trying to say is not that it's not work, but like, yo, when I say I work hard on like doing like ministry work,
right,
I'm proud of that. It's not I don't say like that saying like, oh man, I worked hard. Right, like right. I want to work hard, whereas like working hard is a willing thing, but it doesn't mean it has to be difficult. And that's, I think there's a difference between something being like working hard, like having an actual hard work ethic, and something being actually difficult, like being something like that's impossible to conquer per se.
Right.
I would agree. I was just saying, like, even when it comes to faith, we can't treat it like it's this trivial thing that we can't figure out,
For sure. I would definitely say, yo, like, just the intention and the motive to be motivated to keep going is what matters. The Bible the Bible talks about like, yo, not growing weary and well doing. And it's just like, yo, man, at the end of the day, if I believe in what God says and I know this is for my well-being so I can be well, then I'm gonna keep striving at it. And I think having that simple application, it's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. And I think just being intent and what your motives are and why you do certain things, and remembering that you hold the standard and to keep the standard, I think is meaningful. Again, like, and in reaching people, just being mindful, like how to be a light amongst other people, and being receptive and to help understand people so you can reach them. I think that's something that we can do. And like, we have platforms like Zoom or, Instagram or IG where like how we use them, our intent in using them is what matters. These things are not inherently evil, but what you do with these things can be. You know what I'm saying?
Be good or evil. Yeah, I like that.
So it's like, like Instagram is not evil. I mean, Facebook is not evil. How you use it can be, So I think like it all comes back to the intent and motive of why you do something. And I think that's, as long as you're led by the Lord and led by the Spirit and doing so, like, and you live your life for the glory of God, like, it's a win, it's a W. So yeah.
That's a great way to wrap the segment, yo. Guys, it's been awesome to be back in some capacity, at least,
Some capacity.
But we gotta do the best we can do to get this content out here, have these conversations still. If you haven't checked out the new album, I got an album out now on all streaming platforms.
Echoes.
Tom Heil.
Yeah.
Echoes. It says TOMHEIL. Echoes is the name of the album.
Yep.
3-track it's a 3-track EP.
3-track EP with different perspectives on each song that all come together as this layered piece of cake for a whole sample size of a cake. You know what I mean?
I gotta get an Echoes cake for my birthday now. Anyway, but check it out. Also, if you have any questions, you want to reach out, follow me for anything that's going on. You can check me out at I'm Tom Heil. That's at IMTOMHEIL on Instagram. Legend, why don't you tell them where you can find you, bro?
Yeah, man. You can find me on IG at TSW Legend, TSWLEGEND. You can find the whole team at TSW Camp. Shout out to the new releases from the team. Town dropped Echoes. Charlie got something on the way, but Charlie has 2 projects. Nomad, Word It. Shout out to the newest signee on the team, Alexis Grace has dropped Potions. Say so, working on some stuff. I might have something coming. I dropped the album in January.
Check out Invictus by Legend.
Yeah, Invictus by Legend. Also, shout out to Red River. Can't forget them. Takia Faith and Leah Wren. Some stuff coming from that side too. So, man, but you can find me at TSW Legend on Instagram, at TSW Camp. You can find the whole team. You can find us at So What You Think Podcast on IG. And you can find Red River at Red River Entertainment on IG. I'll post everything below in the description. So
awesome. And one last shout out. We also have a YouTube now for the team that you'll not only find this video on, but other videos, music videos, behind the scenes stuff. So please subscribe, share, like all the videos, get us in the algorithm, y'all. And we love y'all. Love y'all. God bless.
All right, bro. It was fun.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna try to get out of here now.